Hello and welcome to the Celebration Space. My name is Kaylee Phelps, and today we're going to talk about what people really bid on in auctions. This is something that is very close to my heart. I got my start in my career in nonprofit event fundraising through a mobile bidding platform. So what that means is basically my chief role and responsibility was to make nonprofits money by making sure that they made the most that they could in their silent auction, also in all of their payment processing as far as ticket sales and donations and live auction, raffles, all of that good stuff. So this is taking me back to my roots a little bit, and I think it's an important topic because there is a lot to donate to right now. And what my experience has shown me is that you can do it virtually and you can make a lot of money and you can bring people together in community. There is a lot to donate to as far as natural disasters, racial inequality, a global health crisis, and also you have nonprofits doing incredible work right now that still need to meet their fundraising goals so that they can maintain their staff, maintain what they're doing in the world, and continue making our world a better place. So that is why we're talking about that today. I'm going to start with the 3 things that I have seen that universally across the board sell. So what you're gonna see, no matter who your audience is, things that always go are alcohol, travel, and unique experiences. So it's a little bit dicey right now, as we know, during the global health crisis, and maybe you're watching this at a later time and we're not in the global health crisis anymore, which I'm very happy for you if that is what's happening. But right now, we know that alcohol will sell. Normally, if you are selling alcohol, you need to be careful, especially if you have a local audience, you'll be able to drop it off. But if you're sending anything through the mail, or if you need to look at some of your different rights and responsibilities as far as protecting yourself as an organization and depending on what state you are in. Normally the alcohol that sells is a unique alcohol that normally you can't get or is a little bit more rare to your region. Maybe it's a signed bottle, maybe it's just really nice, and you are starting in silent auctions. Normally the starting bid price is at 50% of the value, so maybe it is a $200 bottle of wine and you're starting at $100 and people are really psyched about that. Or maybe you're bundling packages of wine, or maybe you have a really nice whiskey and some tumblers. Any kind of alcohol with an alcohol accessory normally goes. So that is something that I know we can still continue to look into during this time. Unique experiences is another thing that you might be able to really take advantage of. You can do something like a behind the scenes moment, a meeting via Zoom. If you are doing something socially distanced and maybe it's at the aquarium, I know that the Georgia Aquarium does this where they do behind the scenes tours, and really unique experiences are something that you can have a really wonderful experience, but how are you going to level that up to something that the general public either doesn't know exists or a connection that they might need or want to have to that experience? Or it could just be something really pricey that they didn't even know that they wanted to do, like a Tesla experience, until they saw it in front of them and are like, wow, I really want to drive a fancy car. So that's unique experiences. You can kind of play around with that with your audience, what you have available, what you can get in your community, and maybe who your board members might have connections to. And travel. So travel is something that's a little bit dicey as well right now, but it's something where you can talk to different airlines, different people that want to have really positive public perception right now, where you could do e-vouchers, you can also do local hotels, you can do places within driving distance, you can even do, if a board member has a really beautiful cottage on a lake or a house in the mountains, if you in Georgia, that's a big deal, or really in a unique place or town, So that's something that you can look into as far as travel. People like to escape their normal reality, as I know many of us have been home at this point. So having a hotel with a spa that maybe is by Marriott, who I know is taking some of the highest health precautions along with other hotels in the industry. So just taking a look at what you can receive gift certificates for or different items so that people can travel and they'll get excited about that moving forward. So those are the 3 things that I'm going to say no matter what event I've been at or what auction I've run virtually, those 3 items always sell no matter who your audience is. So if you've listened to any of my other videos about events, you'll know that 2 of the chief things that educate everything that I do with my clients and in my personal life with events that I'm running, it's all about your goals and your audience. So specifically with auctions, normally your goal is going to be to make money. And your audience is going to be what's educating, what's actually going to sell. So as far as things that sometimes hit, sometimes make a huge difference in your auction, it will depend on who your audience is, what really resonates with them, and so that I'm going to give a couple examples. So branded items, I've been to a couple of really large events where people will get anything with a brand on it. So if you have a connection to a brand that's really popular, or if you, maybe the American Heart Association, a bigger brand where people want to have that, maybe even just a cooler or even just a blanket or something where they can get something cozy, but it has a brand on it that they want to show that they support. That is something that will go at an event where your audience really cares about your brand. Experiences specific to your organization. I have seen parking spaces at schools or the front of the line for pickup. I saw a parking space at a school go for $6,000. So these are hot commodity items that are going to save people time. Right now, if you're doing virtual school, of course, that's not really going to make a huge difference. But in normal times, things that are going to make someone's life more convenient, front row tickets at graduation, that's a big deal. Things that you have control over as an organization that you can give privilege to in terms of if someone is willing to bid on it is really going to make someone want to bid on that experience. And then celebrity items in art. So I have been to auctions that are entirely art auctions, and it can be really successful because you're normally in an artist space, or it can get a little bit dicey because with silent auction items, with live auction items, which we'll get to the difference here in a little bit, you're going to see that you have to value the item. So especially with newer artists that maybe are trying to figure out where their items should be placed in terms of a financial value, it can be difficult if they say, hey, based on all of my work, my materials, and my creativity in the final product, I think that my art piece should be worth $500 and the starting bid should be at $250. So depending on your audience, depending on the money that you know is in the room or in your virtual community, that can be something that can be really hit or really miss. Something that we normally do in the silent auction community is that once you get down to the wire of having some, there's only an hour left in the auction, or maybe the auction is over, you can turn items by either discounting them, and that might ignite some interest, or you can make them on sale items where people can purchase them outright. So whenever someone is creating something of their own time and energy, something that I've seen go very poorly is making sure that you are on the same page with the artist or the creator of what they consider the minimum value of their item. So if they think the value of their item is $500 and you want to discount it to $150, yes, their item is being sold. Yes, your organization is making money, but also please make sure that you are being conscientious of that person's efforts and continuing to have a friend with that artist or creator. Little side note. But also celebrity items. So this is something that we'll talk about how to source items in a minute, but you also, celebrity items can be a big deal as far as something signed or a print that's signed or the original tennis shoes of your favorite sports player or a flag of a team that has a bunch of signatures. That can be really hit or really miss in terms of who your audience is. Maybe you live in Detroit and you got sports memorabilia from another city and everyone's kind of like, why is this here? Or maybe it is a player that, people don't resonate with as well, or maybe it's just really high-priced items because of how you sourced them, potentially through a consignment company. So that's really going to limit your ability. If you have a celebrity speaking at your event or through your virtual conference or fundraiser, that's something that if you have memorabilia for that person, that normally is a hit. So those are things that can kind of be, depending on your audience, really figuring out. Gift baskets are another thing that if you know your audience, if you're working with primarily parents and you want to get a bunch of books for kids or different items, some things are really going to be a big hit and some things are going to be a miss. So we're going to talk about live auctions versus silent auctions. So there are a couple of rules of thumb here. A live auction normally has bigger ticket items, so you're going to want between 5 and 10 of those items if you are in person. Virtually, it can be a little bit different. I would always recommend on having higher quality items rather than having more quantity items. So I have been in live auctions that have had 3 items. I have been in live auctions that have 45 items. So the 45 items, really long ones, if you have an engaged audience, can be really wonderful, but normally people, including your auctioneer, are going to be really tired after item 25. So just keeping in mind the pacing of your event as well. So if you want to start a bidding war and you're in a live auction and an item isn't really selling, your auctioneer might take some creative freedoms and start singling people out in the audience or talking to people or bring up the creator to talk about their piece. That can always add on to your programming as well. So just keeping in mind what you're going to be doing there. And as I said, it's always quality over quantity. You want items that their value is at least $1,000 so that you can start. Normally a live auction, the starting bid is at least a few $100s. So I would say stick to those bigger ticket items. You can advertise them as being part of the live auction. People can get really excited about them. It can create a buzz, and that will be something that will be really great. Just for context, that parking space that I talked about earlier, that was in a live auction. I've seen puppies auctioned off. I've seen boats auctioned off. I've seen trips and wine and a bunch of different things that you can do. Tesla experiences. As I've said, I've seen that in a live auction or a silent auction, depending on what you have going on in your item set. So with a silent auction, something else that you want to make sure that you do is that you don't have too much saturation in your silent auction. So as with most things in economics, it's going to be depending on supply and demand. So supply, or how rare the item is, and then the demand of your audience, what they connect with. So making sure that also just the supply of items. So if you have 5 of the same item that you are auctioning off and you have 200 people, you're going to have people looking at what the cheapest price of that item is, and whereas if you just had 1 or 2 of them, they're going to create a bidding war and amp it up. So just keeping in mind that you don't have too much saturation. I have been at events where there are 200 people and there are 400 items, and you will inevitably end up with 100 items that are unsold at the end of the night or at the end of your virtual event. And that's something then you just have to figure out what you're going to say to the donors of those items, what you're going to do to either reinvent those items for another event, or how you're going to convert them to an on-sale item or a discounted item to be able to sell them to make more money for your organization at that time. So And I do want to say, I know I mentioned it earlier, but I would say 50% is usually the magic number when it comes to silent auctions. You want about 50% of the value of the item to be the starting bid. That can really vary from 40% to 60% depending on the niche in your audience of the item. And if you want to start a bidding war, you might start it a little bit lower so that people really pick up the pace. But 50% is the general rule of thumb there. I also use 50% as you should have no more items than 50% of your attendees. So if you have 300 attendees, having no more than 150 items, which sounds like a lot. It is a lot. Sometimes you receive items from different places, and that is the perfect segue into how to source your items. So a lot of different organizations I've worked with have opened up applications to be able to donate items, and that can go really well or it can go really not well, mostly because sometimes you end up receiving items that are not on brand or on message, or receiving handmade items that the value is $10, and so you're starting your bids really low, and then your item count is increasing exponentially, and you end up with some more lower value item things than having more room for higher value item things. So really being intentional, I would say start with your own community within your organization. So if you have a board where usually they will be higher donors that are part of your board members, figuring out what connections they have to which businesses, and then reaching out to different businesses specifically, or reaching out to specific donors that have donated things in the past, and then maybe opening up to the community as an application for items and just stating that you have a minimum value or anything like that. You want to make sure that you kind of strike the note of, we would love your items to help benefit our organization and our cause, but also making sure that people know the types of items that you are looking for. So striking that balance of, this is what we're looking for, but we're also really thankful for your help. So another thing I wanted to talk about is consignment items. So if you are struggling with some big value items, consignment companies can be really helpful depending on what your retainer might be, depending on your audience, and depending on, different things that if you're willing to sacrifice as an organization. So they might have a minimum number of items that you need to receive from consignment, and a minimum number of a minimum amount of money that you need to return to them for those items, whether or not all of them sold. So I know people who have had safaris through consignment companies, which is really awesome and normally a big ticket item, but the value or retainer of the consignment company is $6,000, and if that item sells at $5,000, you actually have to pay you still have to pay the amount of money to the consignment company. So it can sometimes end up backfiring, and you end up owing a consignment company different amounts of money. So they can be really great if done properly and with the audience and knowing what money is in your community or in the room, in the virtual community, if you're doing a virtual event or fundraiser. But I would just be careful to know exactly what you're going into with the consignment company before signing up for a bunch of items that might not sell and you still owe them a financial number. So the last thing I want to talk about, that's a really kind of the quick and dirty version of what you need for silent auction items, what sells, what might sell depending on your audience, and different ways to source items, and a couple of rules of thumb. I would also recommend always diversifying the types of fundraising that you have. So you might be receiving fundraising from a silent auction, a live auction, but also ticket sales or raffle sales, straight donations, or any kind of games. So just knowing your audience, and you might have different brackets of donors where you want to make sure that there's no money left on the table in terms of maybe someone's not willing to spend $200, but they're willing to spend $25 on a raffle ticket, and also taking the items in your set and knowing which items maybe wouldn't be could be really profitable for a raffle item rather than being in the silent auction. Maybe it's a piece of technology, maybe it is a piece of alcohol, different things that are really going to create a buzz that, oh, maybe I only pay $25 for a raffle ticket, but I could win a $300 bottle of scotch or whatever the item is. So making sure that you diversify across the board will really help you to make the most money in your auction, fundraiser, and whatever cause you are making money for. So I hope that this was helpful. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I'm sure I will do more videos on diversifying different types of games and raffles that you can incorporate into your event. But that is all for me for today with auctions, and until next time, enjoy celebrating today.